Welcome to the show. Well, I was hoping that qualifying would be done by now. It is not. So there's not really too much we can talk about, unfortunately, until we can get a qualifying grid on here. So we're kind of in a sit tight mode. So while I stall a little bit, and I probably won't go too long, one thing I will touch on in this truck series, there's not a lot of slugs. As I go through this lineup and I look at all the different teams, all these teams can compete, and we have seen plenty of times in the past, you don't even really need to have a good truck. But as far as equipment goes, all these teams are pretty solid and pretty stable from what I can deduce. But even then, I think probably the biggest thing to do is just look at previous lineup constructions, and you're going to see typically we've got teams. Well, let's just look at the average over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. The average starting position of a top 6 DFS score is 22nd, and they typically get to the top 5. You may be asking yourself, well, I don't know if some of these guys can actually get to around a 7th or 8th place finish. Through attrition, it's going to happen. Half the field gets knocked out of most of these races. So even the trucks that aren't really that fast have top 10 potential and can work. And we see the same thing at Talladega as well. They're starting around 20th. And they are finishing somewhere in the top 10. You don't really need the best truck in a truck series plate race to get into the top 10. You just need to survive the carnage. And you can look at these lineups and see pretty quickly the best DFS lineup, you're getting everybody to the front, and they're all starting in the back. It's over and over again. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, it's a stack in the back. You don't have to go completely to the back, but around the 20s is definitely a place you want to target with drivers that have had success before. They survive, they make their moves through the draft at the very end, and they get into the top 10. So I don't think you need to worry about, can this guy get to a top 10? No, it's just, can this driver survive, and can they score almost 20 place differential points? You can see it pretty much throughout here. Looks like qualifying is wrapping up. So like the guys up front, Majeski, Sauter, LaJoie, I'm not interested in rostering them. Probably not going to put them in my lineups. Matt Mills, I'm probably not going to touch any of these guys in the top 10. That's my stance. I have no problem whatsoever with that. You get into the teens when they update the qualifying, then yeah, maybe that's something I will start to consider and get a little bit warm to those drivers. I don't know exactly where everybody shapes out at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But it's something I'll look at. Then I'll start looking at some of the better drivers in the 20s, because if you look at these guys, they're not nobodies. I mean, Ben Rhodes starting 23rd, yeah, slam him in. He's probably the best. He is the best plate racer on this slate and in the truck series. As you can see, 8 times he's had a top 6 fantasy score, 8 top 5s, very solid rate. Finishes these races, never really wrecks out of these races. You get place differential with a Ben Rhodes, you lock him in. So what I'm really keying in on is good drivers in teens, hopefully pushing back towards the 20s. All the good drivers in the 20s is where I will be heavy. And then depending on the grid, I'll look at some of the guys in the 30s. But we got to get a refreshed qualifying set here. Then I'll update the sheet. But NASCAR has not updated the qualifying yet. We'll get it soon enough. But again, to reiterate, cool for Majeski, but even if he wins the race, I don't know if he's going to score as much fantasy points. Same thing with Sauter, LaJoie, all good plate racers and all in good equipment. Just can't score fantasy points the way that these play out. So I'm not interested in any of these guys. Maybe soon we'll get the qualifying grid finalized. See if anyone on Twitter has it so that I have something to talk about before I wrap up this quick show. Really not a lot to talk about. If you've got any questions, you can fire them my way. Well, let me see. Has anyone got anything on here? Here we go. Looks like that will work to give us an idea of where people are starting. And Crafton 11th, no. Let's start seeing. All right, so the 99, Ben Rhodes, once again, 24. Yep, jam him in. Trying to remember these numbers off the top of my head. I always like the Henderson cars, trucks. We don't get Kligerman in this. I think it's going to be Stephen Parsons. That's fine by me. Is that Spencer Boyd back here? Always survives. He won a Talladega race once. Has some pretty solid plate racing wins. Those are young motorsports, and young motorsports tends to put together some pretty good plate trucks. So there's going to be questions around that truck. God, I'm trying to remember these numbers. This is not the easiest thing. 19, yeah, that's a McAnally truck. So yes, Ben Rhodes, yes. The 38 Front Row Motorsports. That's going to be Lane Riggs. Yeah, I can play that. Doesn't have as much experience. Maybe you look at Friesen in 17th. I don't know. The 13 of Thor. This is, I think it's going to be Jake, what's his name? So maybe a possibility there. Come on, NASCAR. Give me the actual grid. Make it easier on me so I don't have to remember these numbers off the top of my head. Road starts 24th. Eckes 25th. Yeah. They're going to be very popular, right? 24th, 25th, McAnally, Anderson truck, Tricon here, 11, that's Heim. Yeah. Hold on. On another screen, I can pull up the numbers a little bit quicker. So, yeah, Heim starting 26th. Absolutely. He's a plate race winner. I believe in the ARCA series as well. Where do we got the other Tricon guys at? They're up front. Let's see. You got a young truck here in the back. They do tend to race well. Maybe Mason Massey is a possibility. 771 at 77. You got Purdy back here in 18th. It's all right. We'll see what Spire brings to the track. I think 71 of Rajah Caruth starting 20th. Definitely like that play. That's right there in that sweet spot of places that we are trying to target. Sorry if I'm not following the chat as well as I could, but kind of hard to juggle this one today, unfortunately, because of the time crunch. Wish NASCAR would give us a qualifying results. Here we go. Now we're rocking and rolling. So we'll just look at it like this, and then I'll update the sheet here in a bit. All right, we'll just start in the back. Keith McGee running for the Rayum brothers. They've got more financing this year. Could be a possibility. Wouldn't rule it out. We have seen trucks in the back do things. Wallace Allen, though, would be the one that you'd really want to pivot to. They seem to, I mean, they brought in a new crew chief. They brought in a top executive. I think Mike Skinner is now working with the team. They're spending some money. Wallace Allen has plenty of experience. This is not really, I think, the junker Rayums that we're used to in the past. That's my stance. So I like Wallace Allen. I like Timmy Hill. That's Brandon's favorite guy. And it works. Timmy Hill knows how to do these races. He's going to be patient, and he can score a lot of fantasy points. Mason Massey, plenty of experience. He has plate track experience. And as I noted earlier, Young has put together, like I did the video on the underdog teams for the truck series. Young has produced the best results. Like I mentioned earlier, Spencer Boyd won at Talladega once upon a time. Corey Roper is in play. Roper has gotten, I don't mean to skip over Boyd, but I don't know what his new team's going to do, but he knows how to do plate racing at least. Roper has gotten top 10s. Those that and FDNY Racing, they do all the plate tracks. They also will race Pocono every other year or so. Kind of had some speed in practice if that matters, but at least we know the truck runs. So I don't mind you going there. Ty Dillon in the back. The Rackley trucks are good. I would play Rackley. I would play Parsons. I would play Heim. I would play Eckes. I would play Rhodes. Jack Wood doing some part-time work in the McAnally truck this year. No problem there as well. Empfinger. Yeah, there are some questions about the robot trucks. The robot trucks have been fine at intermediate tracks in the past. So I don't at all expect them to have a turd out there. So Enfinger, very successful racer. No worries. Yeah, this is going to be Lane Riggs' probably first super speedway race, but kid's got potential. Front Row Motorsports has won this race the last 2 seasons. Yes, that was with Zane Smith, but it's going to be a good truck, and we all believe that Lane Riggs is a very talented driver. Unfortunately, this is kind of something new to him, so there's going to be some risk involved in that, but I'm not really worried. Roger Carruth, yes. Brett Holmes has put together some good races. This is a Spire allied team. Chase Purdy. You can play him. And as we get close to the front, maybe not so much into some of these drivers. Decent equipment, good equipment, but I'm not really on board. I don't know how much longer I want to really go on this. Need to update the sheet, make sure that I'm getting the scraping going. Any questions? I know this is a bit of a short show, but look, it's stacking the back. I'm not touching these guys in the top 10. If you want to try to deviate and be different, you can. We have seen optimal lineups where there is a guy starting close to the front that sneaks in. It can happen. It absolutely can happen. But I'm going to play it safe, and I will be stacking in the back, expecting carnage and chaos like always. So the top 10 is going to be a solid no for me. Not playing, I think I'm just going to blindly say somewhere around 20th and back. There's just so many good drivers and good equipment that are going to score a bunch of fantasy points if they avoid the wrecks. Some of them are going to wreck out. So hopefully I pick the ones that don't. But, Holmes, Carruth, Riggs, probably second tier, first tier, Enfinger, Rhodes, Eckes, Heim, Ty Dillon. And I don't know if I need to go back to these guys, but I might put one of them in. And I think if people are putting one of them in, they're going to go to Timmy Hill because they're familiar with him, but he's familiar with this type of racing. He's done it plenty of times before. Had to make sure my scraper's running. Wallace Allen's a possibility. Hill and Allen, I think people will sprinkle in. I don't know if I want to take a risk with Boyd in his single team, but it's there. I'll toy around with it just to deviate probably from what are some of these popular builds. It's going to be interesting, though, because these guys are not cheap back here. Rhodes and Eckes and Enfinger, you're not really going to save much money with them, right? You're paying for Rhodes. You're paying for Eckes. Riggs gets you a little bit of savings. But then again, you play like a Timmy Hill, you're going to probably have plenty of room, right? You're going to throw in a Wallace Allen. That's some salary forgiveness. Timmy Hill, there's some salary forgiveness. Brett Holmes, affordable. Parsons a little bit more expensive than I would like to pay. Dolzat, cheap enough to get him in. Boyd, a little bit of salary forgiveness. I think with one or two of those guys, you're not going to have too much of a problem getting to all the big tier guys that you want. It's not going to be as easy because a lot of really expensive drivers call it. Ty Dillon's not going to break the bank. Lane Riggs is not going to break the bank. I imagine they're going to carry pretty heavy ownership. Carruth slides in there. But, Heim, Eckes, Rhodes, 4 of the 6 highest priced drivers are on our target list. 6 of 9 are on our target list. 7 of 11. Yeah, so you look at the top 10 in pricing. A lot of them qualified in the 20s and are going to be plays that everyone is going to circle around and carry heavy ownership, and as they should. That's where I will go. Imagine you can fit 4 of them in, and then you just take 2 from the back with again, they go over the cheapies. I don't mind the FDNY Dozat race play. Boyd's fine. Wallace Allen is fine, starting deep in the field. Roper's not completely off limits. Timmy Hill, I think, will be pretty popular, as will Brett Holmes. Those are going to be the guys that go, the 2 or 3 that you slide into your lineup along with these expensive guys. Any other questions? I don't know. I got 27 people here. I guess I probably should go a little bit longer. Unfortunately, Wasn't expecting so many people to show up. It's like 5 people. I cut it short and get out of here. If you got questions, fire my way. But again, the real point is just to continue to hammer the idea that, look, it's the 20s. That's what happens. They're going to wreck trucks. And you just hope that you pick the guys in the 20s that don't wreck. And through attrition, but also you don't even really need attrition. Ben Rhodes, obviously he has to avoid the wrecks, but Ben Rhodes is going to get a top 10. Boom, done, easy. Grant Enfinger. I know you may question the equipment that he's in. It's not a GMS truck or a Thor truck like back in the day, but it's going to be fast enough for him to compete in a plate race. And he has plenty of experience, much more experience than half the field. And you go back to the Daytona 19 race, he's not in the optimal lineup because he started too close to the front. No, or was it 20? Yeah, it was 2019. I think he got 2 waiver rounds and ends up finishing the race in second. Was it this one? I think it was. I think it was 2019 Daytona. He gets 2 lucky dogs at the end of this crazy crash fest, and he ends up finishing the race second. But he started up front, so he didn't score enough fantasy points. But to just give you the idea of the carnage, but also the skill that he has. He gets in a wreck, and he still is able to battle back and get into the race. So it's clear we're taking guys deep in the 20s, and that was already the situation. But especially the way that qualifying played out with a lot of the drivers that we probably didn't expect to be in the top 10 are in the top 10. But then again, it goes back to my point of when we started the show that the equipment's pretty good. These teams are all pretty even anymore. There's not a team, like when you look at the teams and say, what's the best team in the truck series? You kind of scratch your head. Like there's no KBM anymore, and that really wouldn't even matter at a super speedway. Tricon is good. They're not great. Thor Sport is still good. They're not great. Spire is coming up in the world. They're not great. Nice, has seen better days, but they are still in contention. They're still, at least at a super speedway, they're going to compete. McAnally is on the, ascension. They're getting better. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. Where's the bad teams in this series? And so that's going to be an interesting thing to look at throughout the season. But right now, at Super Speedway, Timmy Hill can compete. If Rayum has improved like we think they have, they can compete. We don't have Norm Bennings anymore. We don't have J. Joe Cobbs anymore, although she's tried to show up and race. But that, again, proves the point. The slugs can't qualify. There's no Norm Bennings. Jennifer Joe Cobb's not getting into this race. Tim Vines in the Trump 2024, 2028, whatever truck is not getting into the field. You have to have quality equipment. And if you have just enough equipment for Daytona, then you're going to be able to compete in this race. Like, I'm kind of surprised that Clay Greenfield wasn't able to make it in. He usually is able to get into these races, and he can't get it. It's an elite posse anymore in this series. It's gotten a lot better. Everyone is in play. So, with that said, if you really do want to deviate and differentiate and try to get different, like Keith McGee, if really Rayum's getting better, he's in play. Jason White is in play. Jason White has experience. And if Rayum is putting some money into this, then, hey, maybe you can consider that. If we really think that the series has gotten better and the teams are a lot closer, then you can play these guys. You absolutely can. I mean, if you really want to get different and weird and you're expecting a lot of wrecks, one way is to go heavier on these guys and a little lighter on the Eckes, a little lighter on the Heim and the Ty Dillon and the Ben Rhodes and Enfinger. That's where the field is going to go. And I don't think the field's wrong for that. If you want to get super weird, you're playing these guys up front. I have no interest whatsoever in going in that direction. I would love to hear a conversation about how you're going to roster any of these guys in the top 10 when you have such great opportunities to score points with the drivers in the 20s. And then even the guys in the 30s still could be key players in this race. If there's carnage, if half of the drivers, just do the math. Let's say half of the field wrecks out. Massey's at least going to be in the 15s. If Massey is one of the guys that survives, more than likely he's in 15. So that's, 15 place differential-ish points. 25, 20, it's going to put him in the 50, 40 to 50 fantasy point range. And it works just by surviving. So maybe you go a little bit heavier with the 30s. It's a little risky, but that's where I'm standing at the moment. I don't know what else to talk about. I can't believe I got 33 people here. That's pretty impressive. I wish that we would have had qualifying earlier so I could have the data into the sheet and we could do a little bit more on it. But I think that we really touched on everything that you need to know. Anyone can have a big-time race. So hopefully that's helpful. I know it's a quick, short show, but there's not really any questions. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I feel like I'm repeating myself because I am. It is a super speedway race, stack in the back, stack in the back, stack in the back. You just got to pick where you want to draw your line qualifying wise. Do you want to say, I'm going to look at the drivers mainly 20th and back? Do I want to go 25th and back? But really, it's just going to be, all right, I want to pick the studs that don't run into trouble. Because as long as Eckes roads or Enfinger don't wreck, they're going to be optimal. That's just the way that it is. I don't see a situation where if they somehow survive all the carnage, are not right there knocking on the door of the top 5 or possibly even winning this race. I don't see that. So again, like always, you're just flipping a coin and hoping that you're just rolling the dice and hoping it doesn't come with snake eyes. And then picking these guys in the back. All right. I feel like I kind of let you down with this show, but hey, quick 20-minute show, race4theprize.com. Get yourself the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, wish we would have got this information a little bit sooner, but we got it when we got it. Short and sweet. See you guys.